Howdy there, friends. It's so good to have you all here with me. Although each one of you is watching in a different time, time is relative. I guess if we're talking about times, most of my subscribers know the thing with the sirens, so I'm just going to leave it at that and not comment on this any further. The irony is it's been so quiet out here, and I was like, oh, it's a beautiful time to make a video. Let's just make a video about life, and I have a fire station a block from my house. Um, you got to be able to take shit, with a grain of salt. Everything you hear, everything in life is basically just laughable. I would say take the Alan Watts approach, and that goes along with the topic of what I wanted to discuss here. Modern life, if you live near the city, is total shit. It's chaos. My son turned 14 yesterday, my middle son, and he wanted to go down to Powell's Books in Portland for his birthday. It's like, I'm not going to turn him down for that. So we went down, and the book he picked out was pretty funny. It's of all the books, they ended up wanting to get. One was about dreams, and the other one was called The Thinking Man's Guide to Dealing with Life, or I can't remember now, but it was great, and it's kind of a humorous type, kind of look at, like, if you're a philosopher type, a thinker, you're going to deal with a lot of bullshit in this world, and this is where the term ignorance is bliss truly comes from. You can imagine, of course, I raised my kids to be thinkers. It is what it is. It's not a good or bad thing. It's difficult to say that being wise or being aware of things around you, everything around you, is a good thing, because sometimes the reason why ignorance is bliss, and this is something that I would not have believed really in years past, but at almost 50 years old, I see that many of the things we tie ourselves up with, the things we think about, are just total nonsense and a complete waste of time. In the last couple days, I was going through my old hard drives, and back in the day when torrent files were hot on my list of things, I figured, well, while I have, BitTorrent and access, I'm going to download basically all the music that I could ever want from the bands that I want. Very limited. Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead, kind of discographies, able to get all the music in one place. The point is, even with that access, I never downloaded more than the albums I'd already bought in the past. Couldn't think of much else I really wanted, but one thing I did want was the entire collection of three people: Manly P. Hall, Alan Watts, and Terence McKenna. Now, Manly P. Hall, his lectures covered a 50-year span. This guy talked about everything from esoteric philosophy to comparative religion to, everything, basically. He's very, let's just say, kind of occult, esoteric type thinking. He talked a lot about manifesting your reality and how doctors, for example, can't really be doctors unless they're fully mentally into it, and having that spiritual connection with the patient, and how important these things are. He was very serious, very dry, and very boring, and hard to listen to for most people. In years past, I talked about him a ton, but I don't anymore, because I just haven't been listening to him in a while, and I've listened to hundreds of hours of Manly Hall. Instead, I recommend things like Alan Watts or Terence McKenna. And Alan Watts is basically the perfect way to be introduced to Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, Zen philosophy. He's funny. He's aware of his own significance yet insignificance. And I will listen to some of these, a year, then I'll listen to it another, a few years later, and, you learn new things as your brain develops into this world, which never ends until the time you die. So today I decided to to put on. I basically, as I said, I found my old hard drive, so I transferred everything over onto this little USB stick. Finally found an adapter that worked, and I plugged it in. I was like, oh, okay, now I can listen to all my files. Now this is very basic, rudimentary computers 101 shit. But I'm just not a computer guy. All my computers are old. I've got an old phone that's broken. I mean, I'm not stuff, technology. I like electronics. I like stereos, but I'm just not into the keeping up with the times bullshit. It's just not my thing. But I want to get into that later. I transferred all of those files onto that stick, and I was listening at work today. I'm like, what should I listen to? Some music? No, I'll put on Terence McKenna. Now, I haven't listened to all of the Terence McKenna speeches. I have a lot. In the past, I shared some of these online, but got copyright, by whoever. And so I stopped sharing those. But I have not just those, but a whole bunch of like the Great Courses series on philosophy and every different philosopher. And for a couple of years, every day, all I did at work was put on my headphones and listen to 8 hours of straight philosophy, learning about different philosophers and their opinions on things. And so McKenna kind of stands alone. He's not a philosopher in the sense that people would think. He talks about everything, but he's not, since he was always a psychonaut. Go on, Lucy, go the other way. Go the other way. You're gonna knock my camera over. No, you gotta go the other way. Lucy's trying to get through, but she's got like the whole yard to get through. She just wants the attention. What? Go on. Want to say hi, Lucy? Hi, Lucy. Hey, girl. So Terence McKenna was a very smart man. He passed away, I think, in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 80, but maybe it was 90s. 90. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Timothy Leary, along with Ram Dass and I think Timothy Leary was a professor, if I'm not mistaken. I know Timothy Leary was a professor at Harvard, I think, and so was Ram Dass, also known as Richard Alpert. Ram Dass is great, but that's for another time. In my past, I've explored a lot of these different thinkers, and I have been gravitating towards the ones that are more humorous. And Terence McKenna, he's got some very dry humor, but he's so smart. He was so smart. And the one I was listening to today was talking about DMT, psychedelics, and as usual. And I think that's why he's not taken seriously, because he was so adamant about psychedelics being a great solution to many of our problems. And I find myself feeling that way, and then I'll listen to him again and be like, no, it's not about psychedelics. And I was trying to figure out how to convey this. It's like a doctor talking about the medicine he gives his patients. Just because he talks about the medicine or the procedure doesn't mean that he's not a good doctor. If you're a good philosopher, you understand that psychedelics are at the forefront of seeing ourselves in a different light in a very short period of time. And I've had this debate with folks. I have read and listened to a lot of different debates about, even with Buddhists, about whether psychedelics are a shortcut to enlightenment, if you will. Now, side note, I don't believe in enlightenment. It's not something that you achieve. It's not a badge of honor that you wear. Everything that I've learned about any type of philosophy or mysticism leads to the same conclusion, that enlightenment, I guess, is the point where you realize you know nothing. So, take it back to Socrates, I guess. But you will never know it all. And all you can do is delve into the aspects of life that work for you, trying to avoid things like regret, shoulda, coulda, woulda, or finding yourself in an abusive situation, whether you are the abuser or the abused, and learning basic emotional intelligence, which is, I think, the most crucial aspect of being a human in this life that we live, no matter what culture you are, no matter what race, gender, anything. Emotional intelligence is not the same as stoicism, but in a way, they're both tied together because it's learning how to manage your shit, handle yourself, you know? Don't be so affected by other people's opinions or ideas or what they say that you let yourself get upset about it. Doesn't mean you'll never get angry, doesn't mean you'll never, get enraged or disagree with people. But when you do, learn how to process it. So, trying to find a good philosopher in today's world, people who are really doing the deep thinking, it's either super boring to a lot of people, or it's something that they want to hear, such as the philosophy of the man, the real man, let's say. There is this, what you might call, I guess it's the, red pill? The idea that, just be a tough guy, that's the solution to all of your problems, when really it's a balance of toughness and softness that makes us humans. But that's, of course, my, subjective opinion, and I realize that everyone has a unique take on these things, but I can only go by my experience. If I lived in a different place, I might have to be more rough. But the thing is, if somebody broke into my house, for example, I would have no problem just beating the hell out of them. But at the same time, if I introduce someone into my house, I have no problem opening up my heart to them. It's a matter of just going with the flow and allowing yourself to be balanced. And we've lost that so bad over the last couple decades. And I wanted, it's hard not to attribute it to social media and all of the bullshit ideas they put in people's heads. I fucking hate Twitter. I despise the idea of a platform where people just post incendiary garbage and others respond to them with more incendiary garbage. And the next thing you know, you have a big section full of debate, and what was achieved? What was ever actually discussed that was worthwhile? Nothing. It's garbage. I'm glad it has existed. I'm glad that things like Facebook and Twitter existed, and YouTube comments as well. I set YouTube apart in the social media sphere because I can look at you in the eye, even though we're looking through a digital lens, right? But I'm here, as a person talking to you. You can see the inflection, you can hear the inflection in my voice, you can see the, scowl I might have on my face or the smile. And that makes it a very unique platform. More sirens. So, what I'm getting at here is that as I was listening, I know this has been a little bit scattered, but in my brain, after listening to some of these speeches again by Alan Watts and Manly Hall and Terence McKenna, it brought me back to how the kind of discussions I was having back in 2012 on my channel, really early on. And these discussions about the inner sanctum and the inner connection with ourselves that I feel like has been lost, not just in society, but in myself. I find myself getting wrapped up in bullshit like everyone else. And even though I'm aware of it, conscious of it, I still end up getting pressured by just life bullshit. Now, I have a lot going on right now. My wife's mom is dying, and so she's, dealing with that, and her stress is my stress because we're, married. It's just how it is. But also, many other issues having to do with work and life and things that I need to get done. I feel like this right now, like everything's coming down on me at once. However, I'm wise enough in my age to know that many of these things are my own doing. If I'm not feeling like I had enough exercise, go out and fucking exercise. If I feel like I'm not eating right, then start eating right, right? These things are within my control. If I feel like my porch is kind of dirty, then I need to clean up my porch, right? So even yesterday, cleaning up my office back there where I usually do videos, it took me a couple hours and I felt really good about it. Now I just have to do the other room and the other room, you know? And these are things that, you know, I suffer with. I'm just a human being with a family, with a home, trying to navigate while I go to work and come home, and trying to enjoy myself without having too much enjoyment, right? Because I want to do my work too. Lucy, she's so sweet. Let's see if I can get it down here. Hi, baby. Love that dog. She's awesome. So my message here, because I do tend to ramble, but that's what my channel's kind of about, is I know that so many, especially young men, and not to just quantify it with just young men, but young men, you know, older men have, you know, had plenty of opportunities to figure their shit out. The younger men, you know, and I mean under 30, you know, when you're in your 20s, you're still a young man, and you really owe it to yourself to explore things the ancient way of thinking, let's say. Instead of fooling ourselves with all the modern conveniences and technology and thinking that our voice matters on, say, Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else, try something. If you find yourself feeling depressed or anxious, or, you know, just not feeling up to par most of the time, which I have plenty of times like that, turn off all your notifications to start, which, you know, I did years ago, which means no reminders from Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or anything like that. Turn off the media, basically the notifications volume on your phone. When people say don't take your phone into your room at night, or you know, turn off your ringer, or don't answer every call, or don't check your email all the time, to me that's just obvious shit that I do. I don't do those things. Sure, I'll watch YouTube videos, and sometimes I'll be reading an article, but usually it's something educational. That's what I'm into. But if I find myself looking, you know, at a headline that I want to click on that says something controversial about somebody that's irrelevant, I sometimes have to stop myself from, you know, clicking on that, because god damn it, we get that dopamine rush and we can't help it. It's the biggest drug problem that we've ever had in history right now. It's not Fent, it's the internet, and it has convinced us that, oh my god, you're such a lush dog. It's convinced us that being online is important. Having a social impact and having likes and follows. And coming from a YouTuber, right? Of course, that sounds ridiculous. Of course, I'm here talking to you. I want to make videos where people listen to what I have to say too. I have stopped myself in the past from making anything relating to controversial topics, but sometimes I have to touch on a topic that is more modern or having more to do with something that people are talking about. I don't do it as often, but when I do, of course, they get more views, and I think about the mentality of somebody who just wants to be recognized, wants to get, quote, famous online, YouTube famous, which when you ask kids these days what they want to do, they don't want to be astronauts anymore. They want to be YouTubers, or forbid the term influencer, which basically means you never did anything except got famous online, and now you're selling products that you probably don't even use. And that world needs to just completely be out of your life. When people talk about this influencer or that, I don't know their names. I don't know who they are. And it's not because I'm out of touch. It's because I choose to be out of touch with that. Hell, I don't even know some of these big YouTubers people talk about. I'm into hearing people talk about philosophy and life. Videos like this, like I'm making right now, these are the kind of videos I like to watch. A person being honest, talking to the camera, where I can look at them and say, okay, this person knows how they feel. Not a bunch of jump cuts where it's like you're just cutting out every every phrase every 3 seconds, like jump cuts drive me nuts. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but oh, that'd be a hilarious shirt. Jump cuts drive me nuts. Anyway, reminds me of an old bumper sticker. Tight butts drive me nuts, I think is what it is. But anyway, we live in a weird world, and weird in the sense that comparing it to the way it was when I was a kid, things have changed immensely. What's considered the norm now, of course, time is always changing, and I'm accepting of it. I understand that we change. We're humans. We're evolving. But I feel like with all the depression out there, with all the, anxiety and the problems that especially younger kids are having, are we doing something wrong? So, back to the beginning here. After listening to Terence McKenna, it reminded me of how important psychedelics were to me in my discovery of some of these truths, my understanding of Stoicism, my understanding of myself and life. I grew up in a time when you could go down to Portland and just pick it up anywhere on the corner, LSD. And I'm not going to advise anyone who is a minor to try these things, and I need to make that disclaimer because I want to be a responsible human being. I don't discuss psychedelics anymore these days because of the fact that YouTube back in the early days would delete or, basically sideline any video I made about psychedelics. But what's happened is a psychedelic renaissance lately. It's like just being justified. I'm just watching this now. It's the same thing with the cannabis and CBD and everything else. Now all of a sudden it's trendy, so people want to go microdose. They want to do this or that. The same people who would have in the past been like, oh, the law says it's illegal. But all that aside, I'm so grateful that psychedelics are finally being taken seriously, because those are the tools that showed me, not just showed me, I read many of the things that I learned about life and, mysticism, if you will. But it was psychedelics that confirmed that reminded me that we're all woven into this tapestry of life, and that each one of us has our benefits and our drawbacks and our ups and downs, and that this world could be different. It could be better. And it doesn't require psychedelics to see that. I want to make the point that each person is completely unique. There are some very perceptive people out there who, from a very young age, just seem to be wise beyond their years. Listen to those people. Not the ranting ones. No. I think that there are some we are developing a lot of awareness at a younger age today. But at the same time, we're unable to really process these things until we get older. It's about wisdom, and wisdom cannot be bought, it cannot be sold, it cannot be learned or taught. Wisdom is just having an idea. Think of wisdom as the scientific part of, the science. You do an experiment, you have a theory, right? So knowledge is like the theory, wisdom is like the experiment. Once you've done the experiment and you try these things, it's like if a person takes on a new religion and all of a sudden they say, this is the best religion I've ever had. It's like, well, give it a week, I mean, you have to process these things. And I think that we're not giving ourselves enough time to process anything. Because as soon as we stop to think, we turn on another video or another podcast or jump on our phones and read Twitter. When I found out that the average office worker, checks their email 74 times a day, I know these studies are often bullshit. But let's just cut that in half and say even 30. I know a lot of people check their email several times an hour. It's just something people do. Think of email as like a mailbox. Mail comes once a day. check it once a day. I know that sounds ridiculous, and if you run a business where you've got to be on top of shit or you're expecting an email, that's different. But it's a compulsion people have. It's not just email, it's your comments. When I started YouTube, I remember I used to read the comments, and I'd always click and be like, oh, I've got like 5 comments. I've got to read these comments. Oh, reply to every single one and always be involved. And if somebody disagreed with me, oh boy, I would argue my point, wouldn't I? But I learned not to give a fuck. If somebody disagrees, let them disagree. It has no bearing on my life whatsoever. I feel like I've learned so much through these interactions online that I know better than to make certain decisions about the things I want to talk about or don't. But also, really, just, I think we all need to, I think that we're all kind of, we've been through this phase of, you know, it's been so intense for the last 10 years online. And I feel like people are finally kind of sick of the bullshit and the drama. And a lot of people are walking away from the charlatans, if you will. So that was my long and scattered rant about psychedelics and modern life. I really wish I could have been more specific, but this has turned into a very long video. And I could go on forever because I have so much to say, but I want to save this for a more organized and orchestrated discussion about psychedelics in particular. And I'm going to do that now. So, thank you for listening. I appreciate you all. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Nature, as always, because I don't take sponsors, because I don't need a VPN, and I sure as hell don't need a Ridge wallet. And but if you would like to contribute to the channel, you can always go to Patreon/Carpo719 and sign up for one of the tiers there. And other than that, I think I've covered all the bases I need to cover for this very moment in time and space. And even though you're all watching at different times, just remember that time is affected by gravity, and therefore you're probably all watching at the exact same time relative to your position within this universe. And I'll see you later. Peace.